Hi, everyone. I'm Liza Weale, founder of Gatehouse Admissions.
And I'm Jeremy Shinewald, founder of mbaMission.
And today we're reviewing an application essay from an MBA applicant who was admitted to Harvard Business School. If you want to follow along, use the link below to download a free copy of our book of successful HBS application essays. Today, we're looking at Megan's Business-Minded essay. So let's take a look. Just before starting middle school, I stopped hearing intermittently. Turns out I had an oral-related autoimmune disease. When the doctor advised me to consider taking the school year off, I refused. While juggling doctor appointments, experimental treatments, and school accommodations, I was often told I couldn't do the same things as my peers, that everything had limitations. But that just fueled me more. Years later, I started my career on Wall Street. Perceived limitations be darned. I thrived in banking's intensity. As I mastered financial modeling, I also learned to turn my self-advocacy outwards on the businesses around me. A longtime fan of Oddity, a sister and brother-founded beauty health tech company with cult-like loyalty, I pushed my MD to start covering the company, securing Platinum Bank a key advisory role for the company's future capital needs. Especially exciting was collaborating with Oddity's CPO on an event for International Women's Day, which included networking, shopping, and a fireside chat. Supporting a female co-founded business was rewarding, but it's been at Private Equity Co. where my vision for the future has crystallized. Helping HealthWise, a vitamin and supplements brand, evolve via social media marketing from a sleepy clinical product into a trending direct-to-consumer brand revealed the blossoming market for consumers wanting more control over their health. As a young woman, I've long been dismissed in doctor appointments with remarks like, maybe it's anxiety, and you look healthy, nothing is wrong. I'm determined to shift this paradigm by creating solutions that equalize health outcomes. By leveraging my expertise in health and consumer investing, I aim to help entrepreneurs redefine how women and marginalized communities perceive and engage with their healthcare. My long-term goal is to establish a femme health tech venture that challenges paternalistic dynamics and empowers individuals with the knowledge and tools to advocate for themselves. All right, Jeremy, you start. What is something that stood out to you?
Well, for starters, I think this is an essay that's just incredibly clean and easy to follow. The essay does the work because the story does the work. The writer creates all of the necessary linkages quite easily for the reader to follow, and there's no drama because she's lived it. She doesn't need to say, I had an oral related disease. My heart pounded. I thought, what am I going to do with my life? And that moment, I determined that I had to become a self-advocate. We understand. It's very credible that was a inflection point. We can, and that she could become her own advocate after that. And that's because she tells it to us in sort of actually in a more plain way that makes it more credible. The lack of drama is effective for her. So I think that's really wonderful. I was like trying to look for a sophisticated word. The closest I came was paternalistic. That came at the very end. It's perfectly fine to use that appropriate word. I'm just saying she wasn't, the whole essay wasn't, it wasn't overwrought. It was just very straightforward, because what people don't realize is that, the person who's reading this may have read a stack of those that day, and they don't have time to start sifting through and dealing with, they want to absorb quickly. They want the information. And so I think this is one where you can quickly absorb that and move through the essay quite well. I've got a few more thoughts. I'm happy to let you chime in as well, of course.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting is that her goals, you really believe them because they have this personal connection to where she started fighting this autoimmune disease. But I think sometimes people think they need that personal connection. It started from childhood, as you were saying, this kind of overwrought, started from childhood. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Right. And so I think the takeaway here is not, you have to have some personal connection. If you do, take advantage of it. And I think she does a really nice job of folding in her childhood and how that affected her, and how that, sort of being dismissed even when she was in junior high school, how that really gave her drive and gave her a vision of what she might ultimately do. But it's one of those things I caution people from reading this and say, I have to trace my goals back to my childhood. But at the same time, it's awfully nice. This, as you said, it's very believable because she lived it. She lived this experience, and it clearly has affected her.
Right, and you mentioned the word, there's two things you made me think of that, but you mentioned the word dismissed. She kind of talks, again, like about being dismissed in doctor's offices. Like she sort of, brings it back full circle, that, sort of being overlooked. Like it's not just advocacy is important. It's like, as I say in literature, wound and want. It's driven by something within her. And the other thing is, you mentioned again about kind of having something grounded in childhood. Now, it's not totally critical to have that seminal moment in childhood. I remember talking to the director of admissions from Harvard years ago, and former director of admissions, and she said to me, kind of ruefully and jokingly, because she had a nice sense of humor, she said, "You wouldn't believe how many grandparents I've admitted to Harvard," and what she meant by that is people start with their grandparents. My grandfather always said to me, ... And you don't need to do that. For a lot of people who struggle to write, I think, it's an easy anchor to anchor in some sort of childhood experience. I don't think this was clearly like a very formative experience, and so it made sense for this person. But you're right, you definitely don't have to. The other thing is, she also made it's only 300 words, whatever it is. So she made quick leaps and skipped over a huge part. So it doesn't need to be a full biographical statement.
Right.
It's like, okay, here we are in in this somewhat traumatic experience in childhood, and then next we're in a financial services company.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, and aware of other entrepreneurs out there that we admire. And like, you can make these leaps because, and I don't think the reader felt those leaps. I think the transitions were extremely thoughtful and smooth. And that's something when I read it the first time, I was like, wow, that first transition between paragraphs, we lose a lot of time, but we're not confused as we don't need that time. We're not confused as a reader. We were actually following entirely, and so it was, again, very nicely constructed in that regard.
And I mean, that is the challenge of these really short essays. You have to be ruthless about what stays in and what gets out, and are you connecting the dots for the reader? And I think Megan did a really nice job of doing that here. The other thing, I just one final note, I do like how she brought in her work experience very specifically, calling out some companies that she worked with and the things that really started to, for her, it was almost like an epiphany. She started to understand how her experience in a doctor's office could relate to what she's experienced in consumer, and whether it's this brother-sister founded company or working with healthcare or vitamin supplements. It was sort of like we could see her own aha moments as she figured out, oh, this is my path. This is what I'm going to do with my life. Right.
Like, we believe her, and it's credible. And the reason why I know we believe her is because there was no point when I read that where I thought, this doesn't seem plausible. It wasn't that I thought, like, yes, all the puzzle pieces make sense. This is what makes sense for her. She's going to do this. It's more just like, again, easy to absorb because it just made sense via the information that she had provided and the narrative that she had created, and she seems quite capable of doing these things. People feel like they have to have certain goals, or their goals have to have a certain weight or a certain kind of social force to actually connect. Like, they can't just say, like, well, this is actually what I want to do. I'm intellectually curious about this area. I feel like I can make my impact in this area, and that can actually occasionally be good enough. And yes, she's interested in health, but she's also interested in health, beauty and other things, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's just where she wants to be, and we believe it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Stay tuned for our next video in the series where we'll look at Megan's leadership-focused essay. And be sure to download our book. It's linked below for more examples of real essays from real HBS admits.